Dadperfectrevenge. 4 days before Christmas, my daughter called and spoke 8 words that destroyed everything I thought I knew about being a father. Dad, don't come. Howard says it's too complicated. I stood in my kitchen in Denver, Colorado, holding the phone, watching snow fall outside my window, and felt something break inside me that I didn't know could break. My name is Victor Thompson, and I was 62 years old that winter. I'm 69 now, telling you this with 7 years of clarity I didn't have back then. I had spent 37 years raising Dorothy, walking her to school, teaching her to drive, paying for her college, dancing at her wedding. And now, her husband Howard Wilson had decided I was too complicated for their Christmas dinner. After 35 years selling insurance policies to families just like ours, I thought I understood how relationships worked. I thought if you showed up, provided, and kept your word, that meant something. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. So I spent Christmas Eve alone at a steakhouse downtown, surrounded by families celebrating together, trying to swallow food that tasted like nothing. Halfway through my meal, a man about my age walked over to my table and asked if I wanted to join him and his wife. I said yes, thinking it was just holiday kindness from a stranger. I had no idea that simple word would completely change my life. 7 years later, Dorothy stood in my living room, tears streaming down her face, and only then did I truly understand what that invitation had set in motion. I spent most of my adult life believing I was a good father. I worked hard as an insurance agent, building a client base of over 400 families in the Denver metro area. I specialized in life insurance and retirement planning, helping people prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The irony wasn't lost on me later, that I'd spent decades helping other families plan for their futures while mine was falling apart without me even noticing. I provided well, showed up to every recital and graduation, paid for Dorothy's art education at Colorado State. I thought that was enough. I thought love was demonstrated through responsibility and sacrifice. But sitting alone in that steakhouse on Christmas Eve, I learned something painful. Sometimes being a good provider doesn't mean anything if the people you provided for don't actually want you around. The restaurant was called The Rustic Table, one of those upscale places that stays open on holidays for people who have nowhere else to go. The hostess had given me a sympathetic look when I walked in alone, the kind of look I'd seen plenty of times in my office when someone came in to file a claim after losing their spouse. She seated me near the window, away from the families, like she understood I didn't need to watch other people's happiness up close. I ordered a ribeye and a glass of red wine. The steak was probably excellent. I couldn't taste it. All I could think about was Dorothy's voice on the phone 4 days earlier, the way she'd lowered it like she was afraid Howard might hear her being too kind to me. I had asked what that meant. Complicated how? We had done Christmas together for the past 5 years since she got married. I had never caused problems. I brought gifts, helped with dishes, played with my grandson Leonard. I thought things were fine. In my line of work, you learn to read people pretty well. You have to, when you're asking them to trust you with their family's financial future. But somehow, I'd completely missed the signs that my own family was pulling away from me. It's just with his parents coming this year and the house being small and everything that happened at Thanksgiving. What happened at Thanksgiving was that I had quietly disagreed with Howard about politics at the dinner table. Nothing major, nothing personal. Howard had been going on about how people on Social Security were draining the system, and I'd mentioned that most of my clients worked. Had simply said, I saw things differently, and changed the subject to Leonard's soccer season. But Howard had been cold to me the rest of the evening, and Dorothy had apologized to him 3 times that I heard, probably more times that I didn't. Each apology felt like a small betrayal, but I told myself she was just trying to keep peace in her marriage. I'd seen plenty of families torn apart by stubbornness and pride in my years of work. I didn't want that for us. Dorothy, I had said carefully, I'm your father. I haven't seen you since October. I just want to spend Christmas with my family. The pause on the line had been long enough for me to hear Howard's voice in the background, impatient, asking who she was talking to. In that moment, I realized I wasn't family to him. I was an interruption to his evening. I'm sorry, Dad. Maybe next year. Maybe next year. Like I was a magazine subscription she was thinking about renewing. Like 37 years of being her father was something she could put on hold indefinitely. So there I was on Christmas Eve, 62 years old, divorced for 15 years, sitting alone in a restaurant full of strangers, wondering how I had ended up so completely unnecessary to the people I had built my life around. In all my years of helping families plan for their futures, nobody had ever mentioned that your children might just decide you weren't worth including in theirs. That's when Eugene Parker walked up to my table. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing a cardigan that looked hand-knitted. His wife Ruth stood a few feet behind him, small and elegant, watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. After 35 years of meeting strangers and building trust quickly, I'd gotten pretty good at reading people's intentions. These two weren't looking at me with pity or judgment. They just looked like decent people who saw another human being sitting alone on Christmas Eve. "Excuse me," Eugene said. "I couldn't help noticing you're alone tonight. My wife and I have a table for 4, but it's just the 2 of us. Would you like to join us?" I almost said no. Every instinct told me to protect my privacy, to handle my loneliness the way men of my generation were taught to handle it, quietly, invisibly, without burdening anyone. In my insurance work, I'd learned that people don't like to think about worst-case scenarios. They certainly don't want to sit next to them at dinner. But something in Eugene's face stopped me. There was no pity there, just simple human recognition. "I don't want to intrude on your evening," I said. "You wouldn't be intruding," Ruth said, stepping forward. Her voice was warm, southern, like honey over gravel. "We genuinely enjoy the company. Our children are scattered all over the country this year. It's just us and too much food." I looked at my half-eaten steak, at the empty chairs around me, at the families laughing and talking at every other table, and I made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," I said. "Thank you. I'd like that very much." That first dinner with Eugene and Ruth Parker lasted 3 hours. We talked about everything. Eugene had been a bank manager for 30 years, before retiring, working his way up from teller to regional manager. Ruth had been a pharmacist at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital, then moved to outpatient care when her knees couldn't handle the hospital floors anymore. They had 3 adult children and 7 grandchildren spread across California, Georgia, and Maine. "Holidays used to be chaos," Ruth said, laughing. "Now they're quiet. We're still figuring out what quiet looks like." I told them about Dorothy, about Howard, about the phone call 4 days ago. I hadn't planned to share so much with strangers, but something about their presence made honesty feel safe. Maybe it was all those years of sitting across from clients, helping them plan for their families' futures. That made me appreciate people who actually listened when you talked. "That's hard," Eugene said simply. He didn't offer advice or try to fix anything. He just acknowledged the pain. In my line of work, I'd learned that sometimes that's all people really need. Someone to witness their struggle without trying to solve it immediately. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed. When the check came, Eugene insisted on paying for my meal despite my protests. "Consider it a Christmas gift," he said. "And Victor, if you're not doing anything next Sunday, Ruth makes the best pot roast in Denver. We'd love to have you over." I almost said no again. I almost retreated back into my careful, protected solitude. But Ruth was already writing their address on a napkin, and Eugene was shaking my hand like we had known each other for years instead of hours. 6 o'clock, Ruth said. "Don't bring anything except yourself." That first Sunday dinner at the Parker house was the beginning of everything. Their home was a 2-story Craftsman in Park Hill, filled with books and photographs and the smell of something delicious cooking. The kind of home I'd visited thousands of times for policy reviews and claims discussions. But this time, I wasn't there to talk about death benefits or premium adjustments. I was there because people wanted my company. Eugene met me at the door and immediately put me to work, helping him set the table. "Ruth has very specific ideas about how the table should look," he whispered conspiratorially. "I've been married to her for 43 years, and I still get it wrong sometimes." Ruth appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "I heard that, Eugene Parker, and you do not get it wrong. You just get it different." She winked at me. "Welcome, Victor. Make yourself at home." That evening, I met their youngest son, Gerald, who lived in Denver with his wife Helen and their 2 children. Gerald worked as an electrician for the city, and Helen taught 3rd grade at a local elementary school. The grandchildren, Beverly, who was 8, and Maurice, who was 5, immediately adopted me as a new audience for their stories and drawings. By the time dinner was served, I had learned about Beverly's obsession with dinosaurs and her plan to become a paleontologist, and Maurice's firm belief that he would one day be an astronaut and a firefighter at the same time. "Don't try to talk him out of it," Gerald said, grinning. He's already designed the spacesuit with a fire hose attachment. The pot roast was exactly as good as Eugene had promised. But what I remember most about that dinner wasn't the food. It was the way everyone talked over each other with affection rather than irritation. The way Eugene reached for Ruth's hand during quiet moments. The way Gerald and Helen worked as a team, clearing dishes without anyone having to ask. The way the children were included in conversations instead of shushed or told to. Wait until the adults were finished talking. This was what family was supposed to look like. This was what I had always wanted with Dorothy. When I left that night, Ruth hugged me at the door and said something that stayed with me for years. Same time next Sunday, Victor. And every Sunday after that if you want. I wanted. 3 months passed, then 6, then a year. The Sunday dinners at the Parker house became the fixed point around which my life rotated. I started arriving early to help Eugene with small repairs around the house. After decades of explaining insurance policies to homeowners, I'd picked up quite a bit about maintenance and home improvements. Eugene appreciated having another pair of hands, and I appreciated having something useful to do with mine. I taught Maurice how to play chess, starting with the basic moves and working up to simple strategies. The kid was sharp, reminded me of Dorothy at that age when she'd spend hours drawing elaborate pictures and making up stories about the characters in them. I helped Beverly with her science fair project on volcanic eruptions, and we built a model that actually worked, complete with baking soda lava that impressed her whole class. Ruth insisted I had a magic touch with her garden, though I suspected she was just being kind. Truth was, after years of driving around Denver, visiting clients in their homes, I'd absorbed a lot of practical knowledge about everything from plumbing to landscaping. People like to show off their projects while we discuss their life insurance needs. I didn't hear from Dorothy during that first year. Not on my birthday, not on Father's Day, not on Christmas. I sent cards and gifts for Leonard's birthday and received a brief thank you text in return. Thanks for the soccer ball. Leonard loves it. 14 words. I counted them. I called twice. Both times Dorothy was too busy to talk and promised to call back. She never did. The first time, I could hear Howard in the background asking about dinner plans. The second time, Leonard was crying about something and she had to go. Both times I hung up feeling like I was bothering people who had more important things to worry about than talking to me. The silence hurt. It hurt every single day. But the pain was different now because it existed alongside something else. Belonging, community. The Parker family wasn't replacing my daughter. Nothing could do that. But they were teaching me something crucial. I could be loved without earning it. I could matter to people who had no obligation to care about me. One Sunday evening, about 14 months after that first Christmas Eve, I arrived at the Parker house to find Ruth alone in the kitchen, crying softly while she stirred a pot of soup. I'd seen that look before, in my office, when people came in after losing someone and had to discuss updating their beneficiaries. "Ruth," I said, "what's wrong?" She looked up, startled, then quickly wiped her eyes. "Oh, Victor, I didn't hear you come in. It's nothing. I'm just being foolish. It's not nothing if it's making you cry." She hesitated. Then she set down her spoon and leaned against the counter, looking suddenly older than her 68 years. "My sister passed away this morning. We hadn't spoken in 11 years. The story came out slowly. Ruth and her younger sister Margaret had a falling out over their mother's estate after she died. Nothing unusual about it, unfortunately. I'd handled plenty of life insurance claims where family members stopped speaking to each other over money and property. Harsh words were exchanged. Accusations about who cared more, who deserved what. Then silence. Year after year of stubborn, proud silence. Ruth had reached out several times over the years, but her sister never responded. Christmas cards returned unopened. Phone calls that went straight to voicemail. Eventually, Ruth stopped trying. "And now it's too late," Ruth said. "She's gone. And all I can think about is everything I should have said, everything I should have done differently." I stood there in that warm kitchen, watching this kind woman grieve not just her sister, but the relationship they had let die. And I felt something shift in my chest. "I'm so sorry, Ruth. Don't let it happen to you, Victor." She looked at me directly, her eyes fierce despite the tears. "Whatever is between you and your daughter, don't let it stay broken until it's too late. Pride isn't worth it. Being right isn't worth it. Time runs out. And then all you have are regrets." I thought about that conversation for weeks. I thought about it when I drove past the card store and almost went in to buy something for Dorothy. I thought about it when Leonard's birthday came around and I sent a gift that was never acknowledged beyond that single text. I thought about it when Father's Day passed without a word, but I didn't reach out. The rejection still felt too fresh. The fear of being told again that I was too complicated kept me paralyzed. Then, 2 years after that first Christmas Eve, my phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. It was Dorothy, Dad. Her voice sounded strange, thin, not like the confident high school art teacher I remembered. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. Of course, I'm here. Howard and I are having some problems, financial problems. The real estate market isn't doing well, and we got behind on some payments. And now there's this debt that we need to clear before the bank. She trailed off. I waited, my heart pounding, hoping for something. An apology, an acknowledgement, some recognition that she had hurt me and wanted to make it right. Some sign that she had called because she missed her father, not because she needed something from him. Dad, I need $60,000. The words hit me like a physical blow. After 2 years of silence, after missing birthdays and holidays, and every milestone in Leonard's life, she was calling to ask for $60,000. I knew that amount exactly because it represented most of what I'd managed to save for retirement after 35 years of steady work in insurance. It was my safety net, the thing that would let me live with dignity when I couldn't work anymore. I know it's a lot, but you have the retirement fund. And Howard says if we can just get through this quarter, everything will stabilize, Howard says. There it was again, the phrase that had started all of this. Dorothy, I said slowly. When did we last speak? Before today. Silence on the line. I could hear her breathing, could almost feel her searching for an answer that wouldn't sound as bad as the truth. I'm trying to remember, I continued. Was it the Christmas you disinvited me? No, wait. You texted me in January after that. Happy New Year, 3 words. Was that it? 2 years of nothing. And now you're calling to ask for $60,000. That's not fair, her voice sharpened. You know things have been complicated with Howard and his family. You know he has opinions about me, I finished. Yes, I know. I'm too complicated, too different, too something. I've been whatever he needed me to be for 2 years, Dorothy. I've been invisible, and now suddenly you need money. And I exist again. I'm your daughter, she was crying now. Doesn't that mean anything to you? The question hit like a physical blow, because of course it meant something. It meant everything. She was my daughter, my only child, the person I had loved most in the world for 39 years. But she was also the person who had chosen her husband's comfort over her father's presence, who had let 2 years pass without a real conversation, who was calling now, not because she missed me, but because she needed something from me. Dorothy, I love you. I have always loved you. But I can't give you $60,000. Why not? You have it. I know you do. Because giving you that money won't fix what's actually broken. Because Howard will find another crisis next year and another one after that. Because you haven't asked me how I am in 2 years. And you're not asking now. Because I learned something these past 2 years about the difference between being needed and being valued. So you're choosing money over your own daughter? That's who you are? That's the kind of father you've become? No, I said, and my voice was steady despite the trembling in my hands. I'm the kind of father who learned that love isn't the same as being used. I'm the kind of father who has people in his life now who show up for Sunday dinner, not because they need something, but because they want to be there. I'm choosing that, Dorothy. I'm choosing to be valued, not just needed. There was a long pause. Then Dorothy spoke, and her words were cold and precise. You know what, Dad? Howard was right about you. He always said you were selfish underneath all that nice guy exterior. I defended you for years. I won't make that mistake again. Don't call me. Don't text me. As far as I'm concerned, you've made your choice. The line went dead. I stood in my apartment, the phone still in my hand, and waited for the devastation to hit. It did eventually, but mixed with the grief was something unexpected. Relief. I had finally stopped pretending. I had finally told the truth. And my daughter had shown me exactly who she had become. That evening I drove to the Parker house, even though it wasn't Sunday. Eugene answered the door and took one look at my face. Come in, Victor. Ruth's making tea. I told them everything. Dorothy's call, the money, the ultimatum, the cold click of disconnection. They listened without interrupting, the way they always did. You did the right thing, Ruth said firmly. Boundaries aren't abandonment. Remember that. It doesn't feel like the right thing. It feels like I just lost my daughter. You didn't lose her today, Eugene said gently. You lost her a long time ago, piece by piece. Today, you just finally let yourself see it. 5 years passed. 5 years without a word from Dorothy. No birthday cards, no holiday calls, no photos of Leonard, who was growing up without knowing his grandfather. I learned about her life through occasional social media glimpses and updates from mutual acquaintances at church. But my life went on too. I retired at 67 and started volunteering at a community center, teaching basic computer skills to seniors who reminded me of my old insurance clients, practical people who wanted to learn but needed patience and encouragement. I became an unofficial member of the Parker family, present for every birthday, every holiday, every Sunday dinner, without fail. Beverly started high school and still asked for my help with science projects. Maurice discovered he loved cooking and started helping his grandmother in the kitchen, the two of them inventing increasingly elaborate dishes while Eugene and I pretended to be terrified of the results. Gerald got promoted to supervisor at the electric company. Helen started teaching 5th grade. I was happy. Not the desperate, grateful happiness of someone who had finally escaped loneliness, but the quiet, settled happiness of someone who had found where he belonged. Then came the call that changed everything again. It was a Thursday morning in March. I was at the community center helping a 74-year-old woman named Joyce figure out how to video chat with her grandchildren when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Victor Thompson? Yes, this is Victor. This is Dr. Williams at St. Mary's Hospital. Your daughter Dorothy Thompson Wilson is here. She listed you as her emergency contact. There's been an accident. The drive to the hospital felt like forever. I called Eugene from the car. He said he and Ruth would meet me there. I told him he didn't have to do that. He said, Victor, don't be ridiculous. We're coming. Dorothy was in the ICU when I arrived. A car accident. A drunk driver running a red light. She was stable but had significant injuries, including a broken pelvis, fractured ribs, and internal bleeding that required surgery. Howard was with her, but he stepped out when I arrived, and we passed each other in the hallway without speaking. Leonard was there too, sitting in the waiting room with red-rimmed eyes. He was 12 now, tall and thin, and he looked at me like he was trying to place a face he almost remembered. Grandpa, he said hesitantly. Hey, buddy, I sat down next to him. I'm here. Mom talked about you sometimes. She said you were busy. That's why you didn't visit. I opened my mouth to correct him, then stopped. What would be the point? He was 12 years old, and his mother was in the ICU. He didn't need me to explain how I had been carefully excluded from his life. I'm not busy anymore, I said. I'm right here. Eugene and Ruth arrived 20 minutes later. Ruth immediately took charge, finding better chairs, locating the cafeteria, making sure Leonard had something to eat. Eugene sat with me in the waiting room. You didn't have to. Come, I said. Victor, Eugene put a hand on my shoulder. When are you going to understand? This is what family does. The family you choose shows up, especially when things are hard. 3 weeks into Dorothy's recovery, late at night, she called my name from her room. Dad, can you come here? I found her sitting up in bed, her face pale. She had been crying. I can't sleep. I keep replaying the accident. I thought I was going to die, Dad. I really thought that was it. I sat in the chair beside her bed. You're safe now. You're going to be fine. When I was in the ambulance, when I thought I might die, do you know what I thought about? I thought about you, about the last thing I said to you. Don't call me. As far as I'm concerned, you've made your choice. 7 years ago, Dad. Those were going to be my last words to my father. She was crying harder now. I was so wrong about everything. Howard told me you were selfish, that you only cared about money, and I believed him because it was easier than admitting that I had pushed you away. These past 3 weeks, you've been here every day. Howard has called maybe 4 times, and you, the father I told to get out of my life, you're taking care of me without asking for anything. You're my daughter. That's what fathers do. I want to meet them. The people who have been your family while I was too stupid to see what I had. The first Sunday dinner that Dorothy attended was 2 months later. Ruth opened her arms the moment she saw Dorothy. You must be Dorothy. I'm so glad you're finally here. 6 months later, Dorothy filed for divorce. She and Leonard moved closer to Denver, closer to me, closer to the Parkers. These days, Sunday dinner includes a few extra chairs. Dorothy brings a salad. Leonard argues about basketball with Maurice. And I sit at that crowded table, looking at the family I chose and the family that finally chose me back, feeling something I didn't know I had been missing all those years. Wholeness. If you're struggling with family rejection or feeling undervalued, remember this. The best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's building a life so rich with genuine love and respect that those who walked away finally understand what they lost. Family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about showing up consistently, not because you have to, but because you choose to. And sometimes the people who choose you become more family than the ones who share your DNA ever were.